second. Okay, I think no. Okay, excellent. I think you can all see me. So I'm just gonna go and run my presentation. And what I'd like to do is to run through the slide relatively quickly, and after that, so maybe take a couple of questions if some of you may have it. So let me just go on presentation mode here. Does it work for you, Dan? Yeah, you can see.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
just
we can see it. Great.
okay, excellent. Thanks. So I think I thought first of all maybe giving you a little bit of a understanding what actually set me in that into motion. So I started my career as an engineer, so working for automotive company, and I was also part of an association called Association for Black Engineer. It was in the UK, and I attended a conference talked about electrification of Africa, and I saw this image, and that was around back in 2008, 2009. And that was the first time at the time that I saw that. And as you can imagine, just like I'm sure you'll be with me, I was really shocked. I was really shocked because never ever seen it before. And I could see that there was a continent that was particularly darker compared to the rest of the places. And this is obviously the continent of Africa. And this is actually where I grew up. So at the time, it really got me really, really upset, angry, and surprised because I've never seen that before. And it may sound a little bit cheesy, but that actually really decided me to move into the power industry, right? And because I said to myself, I like to do something. I like to contribute to change this picture. So that's what actually moved me into power force and then renewables energy. Because when you get into renew, because the whole idea was how can I actually work towards bringing more power to the continent in every sense, right? First of all, power as electricity, but also power obviously gets the continent to take its right place in course of history. So that is what we did. Then obviously, as you're talking about adding more power, you didn't have a choice, right? Either you go for some would say dirtier power because I don't always like dirty because I think that power that we use it was very useful. But we all recognize that as we're speaking right now, so we may probably want to look at some other sources, right? Dirtier power and then cleaner power, because obviously we all know about the issue of climate change. And talking about climate change, it's important as well. Just I think the ambassador he's given us already a very great account of what is the impact in Africa. But I thought I'm just gonna give you as well a little bit of a representation of what we're talking about here. This is looking at the temperature rise that we see specifically on Africa, and as you can see, so the last decade has been particularly warm, right? And even people that would like to let's say ignore it are actually forced to see it and to feel it. And talking about feeling it, it's quite interesting because I was talking. So obviously that's a picture of my family, as you can imagine. So my mother and my two sisters. So back in the days, obviously there was no awareness about climate change, right? Definitely. And I was talking as I was talking to this tall lady, as you see there, my mother, yesterday, because yesterday was like the Mother's Day in the UK. So obviously, I called her just to wish her a happy Mother's Day, and she was actually telling me how much hot it is right now in Cameroon. Because actually, I'm from Cameroon. That's where I grew up, and yeah, and she was the one actually telling me about how they're struggling that much with the temperature and how this can be obviously affected to this could be attributed to climate change. And it was quite striking because back in the day, 10 years ago I was probably one of the only one, speaking about that because people didn't want to really acknowledge that much. And like I say, at that time, there was really no awareness, although the problem was already, climbing. Yeah. So that is actually what we've seen. And even going further, so we talk about the natural disaster here. So what do we know about climate change in the continent? So, there is a lot more natural disaster that we see. So in the continent, you could see that the graph that shows that you can see in blue the one I attributed to drought, flood, epidemic, and storm. And what we know is actually the frequency of drought is now three times what it used to be. The storm is four times what it used to be, and the flood, especially the flood, 10 times, which is really really significant. So that obviously resulting in a lot of people that are affected, and this is what we need to be thinking about. So I know at times if you're not facing those challenges yourself, if you're not going through those consequences, it could be quite easy to let's say to underestimate that. But really, people are clearly struggling with that. This is the reason we need to be acting. But also, as the ambassador mentioned early on before, so when there are challenges like that, crises like that, there's also opportunity that will come with that. And that is what I also want to talk to you about. So looking at uh, 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 renewables energy. But before we dive into renewable energy and understanding where we at in the continent and where the opportunity lies, it's also good to acknowledge first where we are in terms of power capacity, for example. So obviously, I've looked at the power sector. We can look at obviously the heat sector, but also the transport sector. But it's fair to say that a lot more people are conversant on the power sector. That's why I decided to pick that one to give you a representation of as I'm speaking to you right now. So where we are in terms of power capacity, because when we say, for example, that the continent doesn't have enough power in terms of the 160 gigawatts, across the continent. That's not a lot. Yeah, that's what we see. So is a continent more than 1 billion inhabitant, and I'm sure you can see 260. That's clearly not a lot. And how is it not spread? So what is the make of this power? So a lot of it is still heavily, heavily driven by a fossil fuel. And so fossil fuel here, we're talking about coal, we're talking about gas, we're talking about oil, right? As I could see that, yeah. In Africa, here, you want to look at the figure for 2020. 2030 is just a projection of where it's going. That was according to that studies. And now, if looking at the different blocks of Africa, so you have North Africa, okay, South Africa here is slightly different for reasons that we all understand. It's the more advanced and mature economy in the continent. So as such, it stands a little bit on its own in sub-Saharan Africa. So when you obviously dissect the picture of South Africa and then from North Africa, so it gives you obviously sub-Saharan Africa, you see how it is actually spread. So one thing it's very important to notice is it's actually the the share of hydro, because there's always been a lot of hydro in the continent ever since we had our independences, and that was around 50s, 60s, 70s. Yeah, so that is actually what we need to know. So that is actually the one source, the one renewable energy source that was already there. I know there's some question people saying though, is it really if you look at those big dam, are they really ecological? That's another question I don't want to tap into right now. For the time being, let's just agree that we consider that as part of the renewable sources. So this is where we are, and this is a picture that we say that we want to be decarbonizing, one for climate change, but also basically because it makes economic sense now to be able to do it. So just move, yeah. So in terms of the potential, where is the potential? So I'm conscious, ladies and gentlemen, that I probably going through a lot of information that have already covered for people that came before me. So apologies for that, but allow me, if you don't mind, just to go through some of them again, just because, like I say, I had in my presentation and I wasn't necessarily aware of all the other presentations. Yeah. So you could see here that the main source that we see in terms of solar, I'm sure a lot of you will know that there are actually two main technologies for solar. So you have the PV and you have the CSP. And you could see in here the potential. So why is it important for you? Because it gives you an idea if you're operating in any of those sectors where you want to go in Africa. Because as you know, Africa, I know we usually like to talk about Africa as just like it's one place, but it's a huge, massive, massive continent, massive, really. So just to go, for example, from South Africa, from Cameroon, my own country, to South Africa, it takes me about 5 hours. Yeah. So yeah, and if you go top or bottom, that's of Africa, that would be about 9 hours. So it's a very, very gigantic place. Yeah. So this map gives you an idea where you want to go. So the one source that's pretty much good across the continent, I would say it's solar. So we have enough solar pretty much everywhere. Yeah. So now some area are hotter than others, but in general, if you want to do solar PV, anywhere you go in Africa should be good. It is not necessarily the case for other sources, like for example the wind, the hydro, tidal, geothermal, and so on and so forth. So this map it's supposed to give you that understanding of where the potential is actually spread. So moving on from there, sorry, yeah. So the five key sources of renewables energy in the continent. So there are five of them. So you have obviously solar, and again, solar, you want to tap into either the PV sector or the CSP sector. You obviously have hydro. Again, you want to look at big hydro, small hydro. You decide which one you want to go. You also have wind. Wind again, there's two type of opportunities. You can do onshore, you can do offshore. So at the moment, there is no offshore wind farm in Africa, but clearly it's coming. It's coming as well because people are talking a lot about hydrogen. Because the idea with offshore, it's the problem with offshore was it's a lot more money, as you can imagine, compared to onshore. So if you're going to be spending that money, so how are you going to make sure you're going to recoup your your investment? So that was the kind of question. Now with the hydrogen question that's the ambassador also mentioned, which could be now uh, a good product for export market. So this could potentially become interesting, especially if you want to green the hydrogen, because the hydrogen technology per se, it's already there, right? So what is changing is the source of energy that is used to produce this hydrogen. So in this case, if we're talking about renewables energy, that's what we're talking about, the green. So, but I'm sure a lot of you will know that already. So geothermal, that's a very good source of energy, especially in the east of Africa. So the Rift Valley. So we're talking about countries like Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Ethiopia. They can tap into that. Although at the moment there is only Kenya that's really tap into that. I think Kenya, if I'm correct, has about a 1 gigawatt of geothermal. And obviously, we want to talk about biomass and bioenergy. So those are the five key sources of energy that you have in the continent of Africa. Again, so if you're interested in the continent and or if you're operating either as a OEM, as a supplier, as a service provider in any of those sectors, so you may be interested then by the continent. So moving on, sorry, from there. So I just wanted as well to give you a little bit of an idea. The two main sources that we usually talk about in terms of renewables energy are solar and wind, right? So those are the two mature. So I just wanted to give you an idea of how much capacity we have in solar at the moment as we speak. So those are figures that were produced by an organization called AFSA, Association for Solar in Africa, something like that. So what you can see, so we now have uh, we had a 3.7 gigawatt that was installed last year. That was in 2023, right? And you can see where it started because everything started around about you know beginning of the last decade. So that was 2010, 2011, and progressively is actually be climbing up. So as you could see, if you compare that to the global market, so the global market we talked about last year an addition of 420 gigawatt. By the way, I for some of you, I'll make sure that I'll send the link to them so you can share that with everybody. But I've actually did a YouTube video talking about the solar boom that we had last year in 2023. So I've talked about those figures. So I'll share that with Dan. So he'll share that with you. Some of you want to go and have a look at this presentation that I did. So, but what I wanted to talk about here is the 3.7 uh, uh, addition that we had in Africa. Obviously, that's the biggest we've had so far. But guess what? It's very, very tiny compared to the rest of the world, right? It's not even 1%. So that's what for me, I'm saying, look at a continent that is as big as, many places together put into the continent, but yet again, we're only producing 3.7. And I did ambassador refer to that as well. So Africa has, for example, 60% of the resources, solar resources in the world. So, and yet we only having 3.7. It shows you the potential that is there. So clearly, there's something. So if there are some companies there, some people who are interested, I would urge you strongly, encourage you to engage, and then we can support in obviously looking at how can we first of all get a lot more visibility in the African market, and two, how can you attract some project just like we've done for a few of our clients that we've worked with. So another sector, it's the wind. Yeah, give you as well a little bit of an idea where we are with the wind. So you can see as well the installed wind capacity. That's a cumulative one that we have in the continent, and we're talking about 9 gigawatt altogether here. And you could see here the installed capacity as we went through. Same from that's for the last 2 decades, 2000 all the way to 2023, and we had a peak in here in 2014. You're probably going to be asking me, so what happened that year? Well, what happened is, in fact, the wind, just to make it a little bit shorter, again, we recently completed a report that we've done for one of our clients, but that was a private report. But the wind actually the wind in Africa started, and with the Arab Spring that we had, if you all remember, there was about 2011, it slowed down a bit. And when it slowed down, this is where the RIP program, which is a major uh, uh, program in South Africa for renewable energy, that is an auction program, actually started. And the program itself, so when things were slowing down around 2011 in North Africa because of the Arab Spring, then the South Africa project kicked off. That's where we start having the first bid window, because there's a number of bid window where for every bid window they were allocating, there was a number of tenders, right? So it was a competitive bidding. So they were starting to obviously to allocate project to various players. And as you know, wind take a bit more, a bit of time. So we had a number of installation in 2014. That's why you see that peak here, and from there it just carries on. So that's why 2014 was a little bit of a peak. But if you look from roughly to 2018, the average of wind capacity addition every year, it's about 800 megawatts. It gives you an idea, but we can do a lot more, like I say. So it's set to grow. Yeah, definitely. That is what would happen. So just rounding up a little bit, and I just wanted to talk about the investment that we've seen so far in Africa, because that's another place where we absolutely need, I would say, partners, friends that are willing to work with the continent. Is that as we're talking about the global investment, so in renewables energy. So again, this is figures that come from Bloomberg, so new energy finance. So you could see for yourself in here, right? So in blue, those bars are the investment year on year from 2010 to 2020. And obviously, as you see here, the curve in black here, that's the share of that investment that was going into Africa. Again, look, we can do better. So, dear friends, and first of all, when I say we can do better, so don't worry, I'm not just selling to you, I'm challenging as well my own. So in Africa, to say we can do better. So if we say that this is our place, if we want to make sure that we invest and boost the sector locally, we need to do better. We need to have a lot more internal source like pension fund investing into that. But it also shows the opportunity. I usually say, so if there are some investors or Israel are interested to tap into the sector, want to look at projects, no problem. Like I say, so with our awareness program, we can always help you to get visibility and to connect with those projects. Yeah, but I also want to be open and honest with you. It's not a straightforward process. So you need to accept to invest some time and money here and be dedicated. Let me put it that way, because yeah, and we're working very closely with Shimon and Dan, and I'm sure they would have said the same thing to you here. So the opportunity is there, it's big, it's huge, but you need to accept to invest some time and money here. And please, please, please work with the right people. So you may not work with me, that's fine, but please do it. Don't do it by yourself. That's how you're gonna burn yourself. So now, in terms of the countries, just giving you an idea here where that money is going. So that figure is also giving you a very good idea where it's going. As you can see, we tend to have the usual suspects here. So that would be the likes of South Africa, no surprise there, Morocco, Kenya, Senegal. So it gives you an idea how that money it actually split. And I just wanted to finish off by highlighting an idea, giving you some idea of some opportunities. So the wind pipeline. So this is at the moment, as we speak, at the moment, the pipeline of projects that are that in the plans. Not all of it will materialize, but still, if you look at that, so I don't know how I'm doing with time, but I'm going to be finished in the next couple of minutes, if it's okay, Shimandan. So
Yeah.
apology if I was a little bit too long here. Yeah. So
It's fine.
you see, for example, we talked about and that they announced in COP27, so 30 gigawatts of project in Egypt and South Africa. A lot of it, my friends, is actually fueled by green hydrogen. Exactly. That's what the ambassador was saying. A lot of it coming for that. So Morocco as well. And by the way, Egypt, South Africa, Morocco, those are the main markets for wind. And then you have in East Africa, a little Kenya and West Africa, Senegal. Gives you an idea. So that's an idea of opportunity where people, and in there you can have project developers, you can have EPCs, you can have investors, you can have service provider. As you can see, it's just huge. You can also even have professional people that say, "Hey, I like to go and spend some time in Africa." I just want to let you know that here is an idea of countries that you can look at. If, for example, at the moment you're working with somebody like Vestas, who is a manufacturer, you work with Vestas in Europe. Start one quick way of landing a project in Africa. Start talking to them because you already have the relationship. Start talking to them about going with them in, for example, Egypt. For some of the projects you're going to be bidding for. Yeah. So, but as I say, I'm sure you can do it much better than I can advise. So, another one that has been mentioned, and I just wanted to finish up with that. It's e-mobility, another huge, 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 huge sector. So, as I speak to you, I'm particularly connected, for example, to between 4 to 5 entrepreneurs who have launched so e-mobility businesses. So we're talking about countries like uh, Kenya, Benin, Nigeria, so Ghana. So this is exactly an area where and there is a lot that could still happen. So I'm just gonna finish up in here the presentation. I think I'm just gonna end it here. So I would send you a version of this, a copy of these presentations when we finish, and I would add as well my details. And then so I think for those of you who are very interested, want to find out more about how we can have tapping into the continent, making sure that people get aware of who you are and what you do. So it'll be a pleasure to work with you. So I think I'm just gonna stop here. So Shiman Dan, and maybe if there is a couple of questions, I'm very happy to respond to them.
So any questions?
Tony, this is Erik Schmid. I'm also from Africa, Israel for Africa. I put a question in the chat. Is there any data available on where are the energy used, in which sectors in Africa? Is it agriculture? Is it in transport? Is it in manufacturing? Thank you.
Okay. So so I've not looked at the chat, but thank you for repeating your question. So there are some data on where the energy is going, but it's fair to say that to get any data in the country covering the whole of continent, it's not an easy task because it's not easily available. But a lot of that power, as you would see, would actually go to industry, right? So because for example, the continent will export a lot of minerals. You know, the continent, so a lot of it will go to minerals and extractions. That's one thing that you see. You also see that there's a number of industry mining as well. It's another sector that you see industries. So that's what you will tend to see. Agriculture is not a huge consumer at this point because agriculture is still really, I would say, not developed enough. Yeah, and this is actually one of the reasons why it's not as efficient as we believe it could be. But obviously, power generation as well. It's another big part where power actually want to go to. So just to give you a little bit of a an idea, but I'm sure more research could be done there. Thank you, Eric, by the way, for your question. I appreciate that. Can see.
Other questions? Nope.
Yeah, I have also my colleague Oluwach, who is based in Nairobi. Is in the chat. So yeah. So yeah, I would say if maybe if there is no question now and people want to reach out later. So as I say, so Shimandan, I'll share the
Yeah.
copy and share the details, and more than happy to talk to as many people as possible. Even if people want to have exploratory call just to have better understanding, please, by all means, do reach out because, as I say, the continent is open, and these days there are a lot of people coming into Africa. So you have the usual suspect like the French, the British, the Germans, but obviously you will obviously have the Chinese, the Americans, and some people from unusual places that we didn't hear that much before, like the Brazilians. They're taking a good and strong interest, and that's because, as I say, that people realize that there is a huge growth, due to the economy, to the demographic, and also to the strategic place that the continent occupies. Yeah, I don't know. Let me see. Maybe there's a question. There's a question here saying, I think I saw a question, but I'm not
How would
sure.
you coordinate and monitor the de-risking approaches to innovations? It's a question of on François Stepman.
How do you coordinate the de-risking of innovation? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so how would I coordinate the de-risking of innovation? So is it innovation, is that in a specific area or let's say renewables energy, that's for example? I guess I guess let me respond to that in my field, yeah, because in other field I may not be as proficient, so hopefully you bear with me with that. It's fair to say that a lot of people reach out to me regularly, no later than even this morning, because they have no product, no services that they believe would be good for the continent. Right? And they would like to see how they could tap into the African market. But they're also anxious because they also realize that it could be a very risky game. So the best way for me to handle it, I would say, is number one is to get a better understanding of the market. So better understanding of the market. And one way to do that, it's like say, not just reinvent the wheel here, but you first of all need to approach the people who can give you the information that you need for you to have a better that information that you may be missing. Yeah. And once you now have that information that you may be missing, you also want to have careful approach. Now you also want to decide how do you want to potentially with your innovation, with your new product, your new service, how do you want to enter the market? Do you want to have a subsidiary market? Do you want to go to the licensing model? Do you want to be a pure supplier that supplies to the market? You need to understand. You need to understand that as well. And like I say, obviously, establishing local partnership will be key. Will be paramount. And I would always say to people, be patient. So I also be open and honest for you because I know all of you care about the continent. So you have to be Africa is a continent where things are not as fast as it can be. And I know, talking to some of my Israeli friends in the past, I know there has been some frustration because I know Israeli people, they are doers, they make things happen. And at times when it takes a little bit of time, they can lose faith. So maybe have to dedicate a little bit more time than what you will usually do in other places, working with the right people, and the great thing happen. And in fact, the other positive thing that I want you also to remember, in fact, the continent is not as risky as people actually think. So if you look at, for example, the default rate for Africa is actually second after the United States. Is actually very, very low. So it shows that if you have the right approach, you work with the right people, and you look at the long game, a long-term game, I think you stand a better chance. So I don't know if I fully responded to that, but that is and whoever asked the question, please, as I say, I'll be delighted to talk to as many people as many people as possible, and at least to give you an idea of what is like to work or tap into the continent. So I can see there is a hand here, but there's also another question. I'm just
Yes.
going to see. So,
I think
Shimon, if you can help me reading that properly.
that's why I'm here. Well, I think Leo has his hand,
Yeah.
even though I must say we're
Yes,
part of the Eastern
thank
Mediterranean
you.
culture, so raising hands is something for North Europe. But
Thank you so much, Shimon and Tony. Thank you so much, Ambassador Gideon as well. I just have two questions. Just if you can illustrate in a few words how to proceed regarding the, let's say, as I mentioned in the opening, every African country has its own development plan, and in which many of their chapters it is mentioned explicitly. I mean, what are the challenges in subjects like climate change and how to mitigate, etc., etc. How is the best, let's say, the best way in order to approach the right people, not only in the government level, but also, activists and also, social NGOs dealing with these topics, etc., just to facilitate the access to this ecosystem in every one of the African countries. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. So, excellent question. Thank you very much, sir. So, how to approach these people? I would say it's probably to do. I think there's two ways I could see. So, number one, I think some of you are already doing that by working with people like myself. I'm not basically saying here that I'm the only one. Definitely not. But by working people like myself, because we are very connected, because that's what we've built in our platform. We built our platform where in the place whereby we are connected to a lot of grassroots organizations, and also because I do have a lot of my colleagues on the field. So in Kenya, for example, Nigeria and Ghana, so we are able to reach out to some of the people that believe that you may be challenged to with. The second way is exactly, if for example what Shimon and Dan has done recently is just to travel there, travel to the place. So if you travel to the place, you talk to people, so they will point you in the right direction. I know it's very easy sometimes, and when we talk about the Green Climate Fund, that was, for example, an excellent initiative because it turns out that I did some work with them when they were launching the Green Guarantee Facility, which is about bringing some green guarantees to sort of de-risk investment that goes into Africa. So I, for example, worked on them working on the business plan for one of the country that I can't name for confidentiality purposes. But working with sometimes with initiative like that, sometimes the challenge I'm having is like people are staying way too much in the office, in the nice and shiny office in Paris, in Berlin, in Washington. They mean well, but if you don't connect with the ground, if you don't travel there, so they don't travel enough to the place. That's number one. And number two, they refuse sometimes to engage with people like yourself. Maybe because we are not the usual big names like Morgan Stanley or McKinsey or what have you. And as such, they're missing some vital key information. So that is and that's why, for example, I very welcome and I'm so delighted to work with Shimon Dan here in the old Israel for Africa, because like I said, there is a lot that we can exchange, and people like myself, we just asking for that, giving you the right information for you to be able to tap into that. So I would say definitely connect with organization like Renewables in Africa, but also traveling to the place. This can help you to, like I say, to get the basically close this gap and get the missing information that you may not have. Yeah. And
If
maybe,
I may I add something, Tony, here?
please.
Because of course, Leo is a diplomat, and as he introduced himself, traveling, has been located a lot in Africa, a couple of points, a couple of years. But part of our job here, and I know this sounds like a bit of publicity for ourselves, but true. Our job is for those who have difficulties to leave their offices in Paris, London, or in our case, Tel Aviv or Jerusalem or Haifa. I don't want to insult anybody here in Israel. That's our job, to simply do the things in general, the things in order to get the things done on the ground. But, to put the missing links, that's precisely our mission. And I think this is also the next step in maybe in this webinar, and maybe this at some point, I'm thinking out loud to everybody that follow up, to all the based on the presentations from Ambassador Bahar Yisrael and from Tony, I think there are a lot of ideas. The next step is to translate those ideas into projects, sustainable projects on the ground. And I would say that's precisely our field of expertise, to make things, well, get things on the ground. And the best word to do that, to express that, is, I'm sorry for those who don't understand Yiddish, but there's only one word that really fits here, which is making things tachlis, which, it's a word, and that's I think the next step.
Yeah,
Are there more
that.
questions? Also, are there any questions also for Ambassador Bahar Yisrael, or to the presentations from Leo?
Simon, can I ask one more question to Tony and also to the ambassador? I wrote down in the chat, having worked myself for many years in Africa, the challenge is that the technology availability is not always there. And my question to Tony is, how would you see or expect that, where could Israel assist, knowing already a bit about what we are doing here?
Yeah. So Israel, from the little I know, had some knowledge already that and technology that could be shared with the continent, having endured some of the challenges that we're seeing, for example, like drought or lack of water. So as I say, I'm a strong proponent of not necessarily reinventing the wheel. Whereas it's fair to say that you can't just take a solution, plug and play, because every region has its own specificity. So you need to learn, obviously, how things could work in a very specific environment. But having already walked that journey and figure out what could be the potential solutions. So one of the key things sometimes I'm finding here is those great products and great services are just not known, are not exposed to people in these places. For me, I would start first of all there. Make sure that you give more visit. We need to know a lot more about what you guys do and you do well, that we can actually borrow. to obviously to bring to our places and see how we can collaborate together. So that's what webinar, just like what we doing right now, it's very important. Having as well some trade missions at times can also help. And then and during those trade mission as well, having forums where some of these solutions can be exposed is one way of doing it, and potentially as well. I think that was oh, I forgot the name of the organizations. I think it's a common friend, Shimon and I, but inviting some of those representatives from African continent, African countries to come to Israel to come and see as well
Yes.
from their own eyes what is available, what is already done there, can do a lot, especially if you have possibility to invite some of these leaders. It can help accelerate progress. So there clearly needs to be a lot more mutual engagement through my platform, through Shimon platform, to other people. The platform out there where, like I say, for me, the big issue. It may sound a little bit simplistic, but one of the big issue that we're facing here is just obscurity, is that you are there with your great solution. I'm there with my problem. We don't talk to one another. We don't expose the solution to one another, and it stay like that. So that's a simple answer. It may be a little bit too simple, but I believe that can help a lot.
All right. That means we got some work to do.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Tony. It was great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me.
I really hope that we all left with new insight and new inspiration for action. So yes, thank you for joining us today. And
Thank
good
you.
luck. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye. Bye-bye.
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 Bye-bye. And well, the result, the reward of good work like this is more work for us in the near future.
I think we are willing to do that.
Right.
Oh,
So,
great.
Tony, from your side, no good deed gets unpunished. So be ready.
Yes, for sure. Thank you very much again. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.